Hi, and thanks for joining me, and a big welcome to any new viewers that may be watching. It's great to have you along. We have now heard about the government's plans to end lockdown, and I'll say a little bit about that later on and how it affects boaters. Meanwhile, I hope you enjoyed those opening shots of the ice thawing and the peculiar sounds that the ice makes. I wasn't sure how to describe it. I have looked it up and I've found all sorts of terminology used, like cracking, splitting, booming, sci-fi sounding like, all sorts of things. So I just said, listen. So I'm starting this film with a few more clips of the ice thawing and then getting on to the main business, which on this occasion is, together with another volunteer, assisting a boat down through Watford Staircase Locks. The locks are closed at present and boaters do have to book in advance, and I give some explanation about that. What I particularly like about this video is that it's the first chance I've had to talk a boat down through the locks. In other words, I give a step-by-step explanation of how a boat passes through Watford Locks. I have filmed at the locks myself many times, going through either down or up, but you're seeing this from a completely different angle because I'm firmly on the ground and the boat is in the water, and I hope you'll enjoy watching that. 2 years ago I did make a series of 3 films about repair works at Watford Locks, and in the final episode I included an explanation as to how the locks work, and I will include a link to that in the video description. Take a look. I hope you enjoy. Hi, I'm off to Watford Locks today to help a boat through them. I'm going with another boater from the marina. We're both volunteers there, so I thought I'd put my uniform on. You don't always get to see the back of these, so I thought I'd just show you what it actually says. Can you read that okay? Canal and River Trust, making life better by water. That's their slogan. So there's only one boat to come down. Boaters do have to book in advance because it's only essential travel, and they have to book, I think it's 24 hours or 48 hours beforehand, and then they sort out a couple of volunteer lockies to go down and open up for them and allow passage through, because the locks are physically kept locked when they're not in use, so we have to go and attend. So here I am, ready for action, complete with name badge. What could be better? The weather is certainly much milder than it has been, but today it is rather windy and overcast. My colleague Adrian is opening the ground paddle to allow water into the top lock. In the distance you can just see the boat coming down towards the lock. At Watford there are 7 locks in total. There's 1 top lock and then 4 interconnecting locks, and beyond those 4 locks there are 2 further separate locks. I'm just walking up to the pound between locks 7 and 6. You can see the pound is empty. It does tend to drain off by itself, so the first thing we need to do is refill the pound. So now I'm opening the gate paddle to allow water to run straight through from the canal into the lock and then through the lock into the pound. And we can now see the water running into the pound. Eventually, when the level is high enough, we will open the paddle into lock 6 and fill that with water. Meanwhile, we just have to wait a little while to get the pound filled up. So the water is rushing through quite quickly. It doesn't actually take long to fill the pound, and will very soon be underway. Not long to go now, and there will be sufficient depth of water to allow the boat in. I'm just walking up to have a word with the boaters to ask if they have any problems with me filming them as they go through. And fortunately they were very amenable and said it would be fine if I filmed them. So the top lock is now ready for the boat to enter. Adrian is just lowering the ground paddle. He will then step over the gate and open it to allow the boat entry. This gate is actually quite heavy to move. It is the first one on the flight, and it does take some shifting. Should have helped, shouldn't I? But I can't help and film and do it all at the same time. So now Adrian is dropping down the paddle on this side. We have to make sure these are closed before we open the gate paddles the other end, as otherwise the water will just rush through from the canal, through the lock and back into the pound. This way it ensures that only water from the lock enters the pound. So now we are opening the gate paddles. This will empty the lock. The boat will lower gradually. Once the water levels have evened out, we'll be able to open the gates and the boat will be able to exit the lock, cross the pound and go into lock number 6. Here I am closing the gates after the boat has exited, and here we see it entering lock 6. Once the boat is in the lock, the gate will be closed behind, and then we open the red paddle first. There are red and white paddles, and we always open the red one first, followed by the white. The reason for that is that the red paddle takes water from the side pond and puts it into the next lock down, whilst the white paddle takes water from the lock the boat is in and puts it back into the same side pond, as you see here. By doing it this way, there is no loss of water. You can just see the next side pond to the left. Once the water has levelled off, the gates will be opened and the paddles lowered. The boat will then move through into the next lock. We're now looking across some of the ponds. Now the gates are being opened, the boat will pass through, and once it's through, the gates will be closed behind it. So now the boat has moved down one lock. Having done that, I now open the next red paddle and repeat the process. So water is entering the next lock down from the side pond, and now I'm opening the white paddle, which will empty the existing lock into that same side pond. And here it is, you can see the water entering the pond and the boat is lowering. Once the water levels have evened out, the gates will be opened and the boat will proceed into the next lock. And here it is. The gates are now open and the boat is making its way forward. Once it's in the next lock, the gates will be closed behind it and the process will be repeated as before. Again, the gates are being closed, and Adrian, who has gone ahead, has already dealt with the red paddle and is now opening the white paddle, and here we can see the water from the lock entering into this lower pond. And as before, the boat comes forward once it is ready to do so. As this is the lower lock of the 4 interconnecting locks, there are no more red and white paddles. These are standard gate paddles, both of which are opened to allow water to exit the lock. And here we see it flowing out quite rapidly. The water is flowing into the pound between locks 3 and 2. And now the boat is exiting lock 3, crossing the pound, and will then enter into lock 2, which is a separate standalone lock. On entering the lock, once it's in, the gate will be closed behind it and the paddles at the front will be opened to drain the water and allow the boat to drop down. And here we are opening the gate paddles. Again, once the water has levelled out on both sides of the gates, that will allow the gates to be opened easily and the boat will then be able to exit the lock. It's just a matter of waiting. Doesn't take too long, and then we're ready to open the gates, allow the boat to exit into the next pound, which it will cross and go into bottom lock number 1. And here we see it exiting the lock and crossing the pound. And here again, I'm closing the gates. Adrian had already gone ahead and prepared the bottom lock, ready for the boat to go straight into, which you see it doing here. As soon as it's in, the gate is closed behind it, in readiness for the lock to be emptied. This being the final lock of the flight when heading in a downwards direction. Now you see me opening the gate paddles to empty the lock. The boat ahead has come adrift as it's lost its bow mooring. You can see it sort of drift across the canal. I went ahead to retrieve the boat. Adrian joined me and retied it at the bow to make it secure. The boaters we had assisted were then able to carry on with their journey. I hope you enjoyed watching how a boat passes through Watford Locks. As I said earlier, I have put a link in the video description to the final part of the trilogy I made on the Watford Locks works a couple of years ago, and it is the second half of that video in which I explain about the red and white paddles, and also you will see shots of the ponds and the pounds empty, and that really does help give you a better understanding of how the water leaves one lock and goes into another. So it's well worth a view. So if you've got the time, take the trouble. I think you'll enjoy it. I did say I would say something about the Canal and River Trust announcement regarding boating, following on from the government's announcement this week regarding the end of lockdown, which is going to be a gradual process up until late June. The Canal and River Trust have decided that with effect from the 29th of March, some limited local boat movement may be allowed. At the moment it's only essential boat movements, and that from the 12th of April, I just need to check my dates, from the 12th of April movement will be a little bit freer, but still restricted to a family or support bubble. But by the 12th of April it should be possible for boaters, either singly like I am or as a family unit, to go out and enjoy their boat, which is absolutely great news. So I'm at that point where I wish you all well, and thank you very much for watching. If you haven't yet done so, please do subscribe and click the little bell to receive notifications of future videos. Take care, look after yourselves, your friends and families. Until the next time, until we meet again, bye for now.